Everything we stand for is under attack. Our individual freedom is under attack. Our rights are under attack. The sovereignty of our nation is under attack. Europe's most powerful leaders sit around tables making decisions that will shape the lives of millions. But what if I told you that one of them, a leader trusted by her people, was secretly working against her own nation's interests? What if the very person elected to protect her country was instead serving a foreign agenda? This isn't fiction. This is the story unfolding right now in Europe involving Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. A story of betrayal, backroom deals, and a shocking plan that could change Europe forever. On a quiet evening in early 2025, something unusual happened. Giorgia Meloni and Friedrich Merz met privately, with no cameras, no press releases, just the two leaders behind closed doors. At first glance, such a meeting might seem ordinary. Leaders meet all the time. But these two politicians come from completely different worlds. Meloni rose to power on a wave of nationalist sentiment, promising Italians she would protect their borders, control immigration, and put Italy first. Her entire political brand was built on being tough on migration. Merz, on the other hand, represents Germany's traditional conservative establishment, pragmatic, business-focused, and deeply committed to keeping the European Union strong and united. For years, Germany has pushed for shared responsibility on immigration, meaning all EU countries should take in migrants, not just border nations like Italy and Greece. These two should have been opponents. Their political philosophies clash on almost every major issue. So why were they meeting in secret? According to leaked reports, they weren't just having a friendly chat. They were negotiating a deal that would fundamentally change how Europe handles immigration. This deal would require Meloni to abandon the very promises that got her elected. The meeting wasn't just about policy, it was about power. Merz needed Meloni's support to push through his vision for Europe, and Meloni apparently needed something too. But what could possibly make her betray her own voters? As news of the secret meeting began to leak, political insiders started asking questions. What exactly did these two discuss? What promises were made? And most importantly, what did Meloni get in return for selling out her principles? The answers would soon shock Italy and send ripples across the entire European continent. The secret deal they negotiated was simple but devastating. Germany wanted to redistribute migrants across Europe more evenly. For years, countries like Italy, Greece, and Spain had borne the brunt of migration because they were on the EU's southern border, the first point of entry for people crossing the Mediterranean. Germany's proposal was to create a mandatory quota system. Every EU country would be required to accept a certain number of migrants based on population and economic capacity, with heavy financial penalties for non-compliance. Italy had been one of the loudest voices against such quota systems. Meloni herself had repeatedly stated that Italy would not become Europe's refugee camp, building her entire political career on opposing such policies. Yet in that secret meeting, sources claim, Meloni agreed to support Germany's quota system and even champion it within the EU. Why would she do this? The answer appears to lie in money and power. Germany allegedly offered Italy a massive financial package, billions of euros in economic aid, infrastructure investments, and debt relief, which was an enormous temptation for a country struggling economically. Additionally, Merz promised Meloni a more prominent role in EU leadership, recognition as a major player in European politics, not just a nationalist troublemaker from the South. For Meloni, this was a choice between keeping her promises to Italian voters or securing her political legacy and Italy's economic future. According to available evidence, she chose the latter. The deal was structured carefully. Meloni would gradually shift her public position on immigration, framing the quota system as a way to reduce the burden on Italy by forcing other countries to take their share rather than flipping overnight. It was political spin at its finest, repackage a policy she had always opposed and sell it to voters as being in their interest. However, the Italian people quickly realized what was happening and were furious. Protests erupted across Italy. Voters felt betrayed. They had supported Meloni for standing up to Brussels and Berlin, yet she was now negotiating with those very powers. The backlash was swift and severe, but Meloni had already made her choice. When news of the Meloni-Merz deal broke publicly, it triggered a full-blown political crisis in Italy. Meloni's approval ratings plummeted, and nationalists, immigration hardliners, and Italy First advocates felt completely betrayed. Social media exploded with accusations of treachery, and hashtags labeling Meloni as a traitor trended for days. Across Europe, the deal sparked fierce debate about sovereignty, democracy, and the EU's role. In countries like Poland and Hungary, leaders who had allied with Meloni felt blindsided, having seen her as a fellow nationalist. In Germany, Merz faced backlash from progressives who accused him of bribing Meloni with German taxpayer money, while Brussels officials watched nervously. The deal could resolve one of the EU's most persistent problems, but at the cost of transparency and public trust. Investigative journalists revealed the package for Italy may have exceeded €50 billion over 5 years, with additional secret provisions on energy policy and defense cooperation. Meloni attempted to justify her decision as securing Italy's interests, but her words rang hollow to many voters. Legislative approval was far from guaranteed, and her own coalition began fracturing under pressure. Beyond immediate politics, the situation raised fundamental questions about democracy in Europe. The EU has long struggled with a democratic deficit, with major decisions made by unelected bureaucrats or powerful leaders behind closed doors. Meloni's choice reflected the reality of power concentration in a few key nations, mainly Germany and France, with smaller countries forced to comply or face economic consequences. Although she was elected to oppose this system, Meloni opted to work within it to gain influence, compromising the very principle she campaigned on. This situation highlights the tension between electoral promises and realpolitik, raising questions about the value of voting when backroom deals can override public mandate. Across Europe, frustration with traditional politics has fueled populist movements seeking authentic representation. Meloni was expected to be one of those leaders, which made her perceived betrayal particularly stinging. Analysts argue, however, that Meloni may have had little choice. Italy's weak economy and massive debt meant that without EU support, the country risked a serious financial crisis. From this perspective, her decision could be seen as pragmatic leadership rather than betrayal, though it contradicts the principles she campaigned on. The fallout has exposed fractures in European politics between nations, leaders and voters, democratic ideals, and political reality.